Our presenter is Dr. Dianne Douglas, a doctor of clinical psychology and a community psychologist. She completed her training in the USA at Wheaton College and at Yale University. She is currently an assistant clinical professor at Yale University School of Medicine in the Department of Psychiatry. She's a part-time lecturer in the Masters in Clinical Psychology in the Faculty of Medicine at UWI. She's a regional consultant on the expert team of UN's Women's Partnership for Peace, Domestic Violence Intervention at the UNDP and UNAIDS, and a past president of the Trinidad and Tobago Association of Psychologists. Dr. Douglas is committed to the psychological development of persons in the Caribbean and enjoys using radio and television as a means of promoting the message of psychological health and well-being. She is super active. She's a member of TTAP, the American Association of Psychologists, APA, Employee Assistance Professionals Association, the American Association of Christian Counselors, and the founder and chair of the Trinidad and Tobago Association of Christian Counselors. Ladies and gentlemen, an undiluted Trini, she says, Dr. Dianne Douglas.
A pleasant good afternoon to you all. A special good afternoon to the members of the clergy, His Grace the Archbishop, and also Bishop Robert Lianos, and to all the brothers and sisters who are gathered here this evening. Not often when I speak in a forum like this, I get a chance to pray. So I thought it might be a good idea for us to start with prayer. Do you not think? Yeah. Good. So Father and God, in the precious name of Jesus, we come to you today. Father, we want to thank you for this opportunity to talk about ways to honor the covenant of marriage, to talk about family life and children and the evil scourge of pornography. We know that with you nothing is impossible. And so we thank you for this. We ask your hand of blessing on every person gathered here, every speaker. And we pray, God, that because of this forum, many will be set free. And so we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, well, let's see. Oh my goodness, I see myself on the monitor. Let me see if I find my good side. About there? Yeah, I think I look at that. Okay, if we could, I have good sides all around. This is good. Okay, so if we could start with the presentation. All right? Yes? The next slide, please. I just wanted you to know that some of the things I'm saying are not entirely from me, but it's what I agree with. So it's always important to quote your sources in case you think, oh gosh, she's just so brilliant, right? So Psychology Today, the American Psychological Association, the Family Research Council, Life Counseling Solutions, the Trinidad Express, Guardian, and Newsday. All right? Okay, good. So the next slide. All right. So we want to talk a little bit about our cultural context. Next one. All right. To me, a discussion on pornography really falls short if we do not face the cultural context in which we live. I don't care how holy we are or how liberal we are, or whether we agree that there's anything wrong with pornography or not. The issue is every single one of us, until we get to heaven, we are part of a cultural context. And so let's set the framework in which family life takes place in our country. All right? So, first of all, view of marriage. Let me just ask the audience this. Is there a high view of marriage in our country? I'm not asking in the church. In our country? Or a low view? Tell me. Low view, right? It is so low that we even had a calypso called a deputy essential. And the deputy wasn't something that we wanted, but it was something that was essential to our very lives and being. And for many persons, it was a very catchy calypso, and they jumped and danced, whether they were married or not, to the fact that a calypsonian could so capture who we are as a people to say that a deputy was essential. You all remember that calypso? Yes. A deputy essential. Yeah. Know the thing, right? The other thing in Trinidad is that we have a high divorce rate. If I remember correctly, the last time the Chief Justice spoke on the topic, not in this opening of the law term, but I think last year, he spoke about 1 in 4 marriages ending in divorce. And he was very concerned about the high divorce rate. Do you know the number one reason for divorce in our country? Unfaithfulness or infidelity, all right, is the number one reason. Our local music, as I just described, makes it very clear that marriage, commitment, fidelity is passé, all right? And so, with Carnival, this is where we get the pinnacle of the nice intersection between pornography and family life that we want to talk about. We know for a fact, and I saw an article, and I decided not to quote it because I didn't want to get in a little trouble today by the author. But the article was saying how to enjoy Carnival while you have a girl. And for those who are American and not from here, girl means good. All right? So when you have a girl, one of the things that you must do is they were talking about how to get rid of her during Carnival so that you can have a good time. They said there are, at Carnival time, you have so many women to choose from. Many of our women are extremely beautiful. The fact that, you know, when you go to the beach, there's sand, you don't take sand to the beach, etc. And so it was very clear. Along with that, we know about whining, jamming, and all these different things. And so at Carnival, we like to break away. And break away includes being removed from the moorings of morality. And this is how we have fun. And we even have so much fun that anytime anybody writes anything in the newspaper, and usually Catholic, oh bless your fuzzy hearts, the person will say something like, this is immoral, look at what is happening, we must not behave like this. What happened at the time when Carnival was our costuming and people had a good time? Why they have to be lewd? And somebody will also always answer back and say, it's we culture. We think. When I was small, we think did not look like that. But now it looks like this. As you know, and let me see if I could find it, you know, Google took note of us once upon a time. You all remember that? And why did Google take note of us? Because it was recognized per capita that we topped Google's list of countries with people using the search word porn on a per capita basis. All right? We were in the top 10 of countries who look for porn. All right? And so we have a bit of a problem. Let me just see the next slide for 1 second. All right, okay. Before we get to that, let's go back to the slide before. I have a little video I want you to take a look at in case you don't understand this country that I'm talking about. And so, can we have the video now, please?
Oh.
Little more volume on the music.
Power Soca Ted. This is madness. This is Trinidad. This is madness. This is Trinidad. This is madness. This is Trinidad. This is madness. This is Trinidad.
Because that's us, right? Any image there seem unfamiliar? No, that's who we are. So, if we're going to talk about pornography and family life and our children, we have to understand that our cultural context is anti this discussion. All right? Yes? So you do not represent the majority of the country when you're talking like this. I want to add one other thing that I don't have up there as far as cultural context. Now we have a global context, and the global context comes to us through the internet, through the cell phone, WhatsApp, etc. And so in the 21st century, my heart really goes out to parents who still have little ones. And little ones, I mean, is under 17 according to the laws of our land. All right? And so 17 and under children. And so parenting, now you have to add to parenting the whole issue of the internet and that global context, what technology has done to family life. I am happy to tell you that my children are 24 and 29, and therefore, until the grandchildren come, I'm breathing a sigh of relief, you know? And the grandchildren better come after marriage. Moving right along. All right. So let's look at the next slide. Okay. So what is pornography? I'm sure you all spoke about that this morning. But I just wanted to add my 5 cents. Printed or visual material containing the explicit description or display of sexual organs or activity intended to stimulate sexual excitement. All right? And another definition. Next slide. Pornography is a visual representation of sexuality which distorts an individual's concept of the nature of conjugal relations. So while I didn't get the term conjugal. All right? Yes. So let's keep going. All right. So I want to talk about the psychological effects of pornography on the adult, the psychological effects of pornography on marriage, the psychological effects of pornography on the child. So I'm going to do it in 3 parts. Now, I have a time limit. So certain people are already smiling there, so you'll give me the little wave because I could talk for a long time. You all know. All right, so let's see if we can run through it with a certain alacrity. Okay. All right. So first of all, when pornography is viewed and hits that pleasure center of the brain, we even have some people calling it brain cookies. All right? The users tend to become desensitized to the type of pornography they use because they are addicted. Okay? Because of the impact and where it hits in the brain, and I'm sure you spoke about that this morning, you would find that it tends to stay there. And you can recall and recall and recall and recall what you saw, and especially if it is shocking. Right? You never saw that position before, people behaving like that before, or whatever the case might be. So like with any other addiction, when it becomes addictive, when you use it to live, and you live to use it. So for my clients who are sex addicts, one of the things they talk about is they must have their dose. They must have their fix every day at a certain time. I remember one person, after he did his, he was dealing with substance abuse. And when he stopped using the substance, he was in rehab, and he stopped using the substance, he had to find a form of pleasure because he was so nervous with the withdrawal symptoms. And we had to rush him to hospital because as he proceeded to masturbate, he didn't stop himself in time, and certain body parts became so raw and inflamed that he had to be rushed to hospital. So pornography can be very addictive. The people who use tend to become desensitized to the type of pornography they use. So just like with any drug, the more you use it, it's the more you want it. And so a small dose wouldn't help you. After a while, it has to become bigger and bigger. But also, they become bored with it and they seek more perverse forms of pornography. All right? So it has to get more and more raw, more and more shocking, more and more explicit in order for them to be satisfied. Next slide. So there tends to be a focus on men who use porn, and that is kind of unfortunate because women use porn as well, okay? But of course, because the stereotypical view is that men are more visual, you will find that often when you look at the literature, they speak about men. So the view is that men who view pornography regularly have a higher tolerance for abnormal normal sexuality. They want to experiment with new and interesting things. Now, you have to be careful here because in marriage, people should experiment with new and interesting ways of pleasure. But what happens, it tends to go outside normal range, and often their women find it almost brutal, all right? Including rape, so they have a higher tolerance for rape, sexual aggression, and sexual promiscuity. So you almost find that pornography becomes like a gateway drug. And you hear us talk about this when we talk about cocaine, when we talk about marijuana, we talk about those gateway drugs like caffeine and nicotine, etc. So it becomes a gateway to more sexual promiscuity, so people start acting out in ways that they didn't before. I remember one person sharing with me how he started acting out at the office. And as he had his diet of porn in the morning, he really wanted to act out with somebody, so he had a plan. So the plan was, you go to the office and you crack a joke, and you see who would laugh. Now, if the joke becomes more and more risque, and you going kia, 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 and carrying on, he knows already you're a target. All right? Yes? So careful what you laugh at, people. All right? Okay. Next slide. Also, there is a prolonged consumption of pornography when there is by men. It produces the stronger notion of women as commodities or as sex objects. So it becomes very difficult to attach to a woman in intimacy. All right? So now it's an object. She has the body parts I want to make it more interesting, and therefore it becomes easier to objectify the woman. It is also the same for women who consume a lot of pornography. If you do the sexual history, and some of my fellow psychologists are here, so they'll know what I'm talking about, but when you do somebody's sexual history, you would realize very often if they are young males, their first sexual experience was some older woman who is eyeing certain body parts and wondering what exciting things might be going on down there, and therefore want to make you a man. All right? So don't feel that your boy children are not targets as well. All right? What else? Slide. Okay, good. We also find that child sex offenders use pornography at a high rate. So when you talk to sex offenders, they will tell you the part that pornography plays in them getting aroused, etc. But usually for child sex offenders, it would be child pornography. All right? Okay. Yes, next slide. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about marriage and pornography. So you hear what pornography does to the individual. And now we want to talk about when the individual now wants to join with another person in marriage. Again, my fellow psychologists will know when we talk about things like attachment theory. So we do a lot of study on how people attach to one another. How does this thing happen where a man and a woman, well, still in Trinidad and Tobago it's a man and a woman, when a man and a woman join together, all right, in holy matrimony, we know that something amazing happens. And for those of us who are Christian and deal with the Bible, we know that it says that therefore shall a man leave his father and mother and cleave, that's an interesting word, unto his wife, and the two become one. And when they become one, that's the kind of thing we are talking about when we start to talk about attachment. We talk about attachment to in children, how children connect to their parents. What is that process? And we look at the fact that some children and parents do not attach well at birth, etc. So all that is in the thinking here, all right? So the psychological effects. So a psychologist, not me, did some research, but we agree, and those, my colleagues will know about Sternberg, and we agree. And Sternberg says that in order for love to last, that this love must have certain ingredients. And he was talking about love and marriage, all right? So people say, oh gosh, a little heat going from a marriage, blah, 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 blah. They talk about that. But what we're talking about, he will then analyze it. And so he came up with 3 things that a marriage must have in order to do well. Now, usually I will ask you all what these 3 things are, but they only give me 30 minutes. And some go on it, so I'm telling you. So the 3 things are passion, intimacy, and commitment. All right? Passion, intimacy, and commitment for marriage to last for a long time. Hopefully till death do us part, and don't be like the man who say, I know a way to part. But anyhow, all right? Now what you will find is that pornography affects all 3. It affects passion, it affects intimacy, and it affects commitment. All right? Yes. So what are the effects on porn, on marriage? It alters sexual attitudes and behavior. So woman sees man, he cocky eye, he knock knee, you understand, but it's her man. Right? Maybe he didn't know how to match his clothes when they got married, whatever. Anyway, she shine him up nice and she present him to the public. And all of a sudden, everybody find him nice. The little cocky eye and the knock knee don't matter no more. But all of a sudden, her man, her precious man in the marriage, all of a sudden, he starts to talk about feeling less satisfied, and there's that word conjugal again, with their relationship, and less emotionally attached. Maybe he used to look a little half dead, he started to look a little too alive. All right? And the wives notice the difference, and they are usually upset by the difference, and the reverse is true. All right? That the husband notices the difference and is wondering what is going on. All right? So it alters sexual attitudes and behavior, which is now played out in the bedroom. I remember one woman talking about her distress where in getting married late in life, this was her husband's 2nd marriage, and in the marriage he brought her into his home, and he had a large television set on the wall, and pornography, he had the pornography channel, and it must play 24/7. She was not allowed to touch that television. 24/7. Pornography in the house is the background to everything. All right? Okay, next slide. Pornography use is a pathway to infidelity and divorce, and is frequently a major factor in family disasters. And we know this for a fact here in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm not going to tell you the sites and so forth, but we've also seen the disaster of people getting murdered. So they meet through some porn site or some kind of site and go off to meet each other. All right? And then somebody kills the other in the process. We also have the situation of 500 of our women finding their nude pictures. You remember remember this? This year? On a site for porn. And when some of them started to talk, we heard that for some, their faces were put on other bodies. In other words, it was not even them. We also know that for some of them, they were lured to certain places, told how wonderful they were, and were asked to strip, and did not know it was going to end up on a porn site. All right? And so we have a real problem in our country. Right? What else does porn do? All right? Of course, we spoke about this already. It can lead to sexual addiction. All right? And then, usually when one person becomes addicted, they lose interest in sex with their partner. All right? Because that becomes too normal, too tame, etc. And usually they want variety at this point in time. Okay? All right? Okay. So what happens to pornography and children? Pornography and children. So let's see what happens. All right? So when children, and you know we often talk about physical abuse and verbal abuse. We talk about sexual abuse. And we sometimes see sexual abuse as actual touching. But sexual abuse can also be visual as well. And if you think of our home situations in our country, and we only realize what it is like when we hear that a home burns down. So some family loses their home, and it is never a husband, wife, and 2 children, 4 people, 8 people, 10 people, 15 people, and you're talking about one house. All right? So usually in our country, for a majority of persons, the home is a very crowded place. And so sometimes you have situations where children are sleeping on a couch, which is the couch that is used by the family to watch whatever. And so the child is sleeping and they lean up on the child and they're watching, but the child isn't always sleeping. Parents have talked about the fact too, when cable television came to Trinidad, and this is where I date myself, you know. Yes, because I am from the era no cable. Remember channels 2 and 13? Am I alone? Oh, thank you, bless you. Remember before internet? Hey, put up those hands, put up those hands, right. Before internet, before cell phone. Remember the rotary phone? Right. Good, I am not alone. Before there were text messages and all these things, all right? So what happens is the ease on parenting for a lot of us, right? The 21st century parent does not have that privilege. So what happens is that you have children looking on a tablet, turning on the television, parents going to sleep, and having their phone, under that pillow, etc. And they're seeing unfamiliar looking bodies. And many times the body is unfamiliar because sometimes the bodies in the porn don't look real. All right? So unfamiliar bodies engaging in acts that a child cannot comprehend. And this can become confusing and frightening. Sometimes children get withdrawn or they feel very ashamed. I am thinking of 3 who had a psychotic break. The shame was too much. All right? Because of what they saw, and they were secretly addicted. Okay. Children or adolescents may experience autonomic, meaning just automatic, that is sexual arousal. When you see something sexy, there's an arousal that takes place. If an arousal doesn't take place when you see something sexy, you're dead. All right? So don't try to play you're so holy here and you don't get aroused. Well, except for the clergy. Okay. Children and adolescents. Okay, settle down. Children or adolescents may experience autonomic sexual arousal at the sight of pornography they get aroused. And it can confuse them into thinking they like what they see, when in fact, that might be my phone. Look on the outside pocket, just turn it off for me. Thank you. Right? When in fact, their bodies are reacting instinctively without the approval of their brain. You will hear young people who've been sexually abused talk about this. That confusion where you feel like you like it, but at the same time it repulses you. You know? So you hear them talk about this a lot. So this is something that can happen. What else? Children and adolescents can become desensitized to pornography exposure. And this can result in acting out sexualized behavior with other children and engaging in high-risk sexual experiences by adolescents. And we know we have a problem in our larger schools, larger meaning the size of the building more than the number of children. But when you have this large school systems that we were prone to build in the days of the junior second, the senior comprehensive, always turn some corner and you find children in the classroom having sex. And now they videotape it. And now they send it to their friends. And I remember one time on a media interview, I was asked, what would you say to the children who was found in a particular school and they were having sex and then they beat up the security guard when the security guard came and da-da-da-da-da. And I said, what I will say to them is, please accept my apology. Because our generation did not do so well. And it is because of us that this has gotten to where it is. Yeah? So they can become desensitized, and we know of children who act out sexually with other children. We know that happens, especially those with little ones. You know, you always hear it, you know, the little boy is exposing himself, you know, little girl is masturbating on the chair, you know, and this kind of thing. Not only that, in Trinidad and Tobago we have another piece. Not only we misbehave as adults at carnival time, and there really is no need to misbehave at carnival time. I have seen people have good fun, you know, enjoying themselves at carnival. They eating, the costumes, the whatnot. But now it has gone into a particular direction. But what was something I was going to say, and this is called a senior moment. And hopefully, I remember what it was. And what it was is that we have whining competitions with 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, and you have the adults clapping and goading them on to be as sexualized as possible. And some of them tiny waists and hips barely properly formed, but if you see it move. And then we start to talk about we culture. All right? Okay. What else happens? In one study, researchers found that more often young people sought out online porn, the more they were likely to have a recreational attitude towards sex. Sex just became recreation. Specifically to view sex as a purely physical function like eating or drinking. All right? And so, you know, that could lead to all sorts of problems. For us who believe in God, we believe there is something sacred about this union. And so, this recreational attitude, which is strong in our culture, all right, is really passed on to our children. So, it's just recreation. So you can do what you want. If you feel like it, you do it. I remember not too long ago, and Dr. Well, I don't know if you remember this, there was an email going around from our psychology colleagues, and it was lamenting the fact that now the word adult, or to be a big hardback man or big hardback woman, was now only about sex. And they were lamenting the fact that the issues were that in order to be self-actualized was that you were now as sexual as possible. I don't know if you remember that, right? And so there was no longer, to be an adult was nothing about responsibility, creativity, having some kind of national pride, civic duty, and all these things. But it was about how sexy you could be. And that is what was now dominating the national psyche, even in intellectual circles. And there was this lament that we will not be able to progress if sex isn't just one of the things we do, but now it is the only thing that we will do. All right? Yes. Research also found a relationship between porn use and the feeling among teens that it wasn't necessary to have affection for people to have sex with them. And we see it in movies that are coming out. Friends with benefits. Yes? And so it's not necessary to be affectionate. It's not necessary to have a connection. And they found that boys were much more likely to hold these views than girls. And they tended to hold these attitudes more strongly when they thought the information was realistic. All right? And sometimes people will tell you they saw it on the internet, therefore it is true. The same way we say it was in the papers, it had to be true. Not too long ago, I was at a conference, and our president was at the conference. It was in Guyana. And I checking online for our newspaper, and there it was. And he gone quite Nigeria to a conference. And he was in Guyana. And I was looking at him in Guyana, unless he could be in more than one place at the same time. Maybe it's a kind of presidential thing to do. You understand? Where you become ubiquitous throughout the earth. But the thing was, he was in Guyana right next door. But there it was in the papers that he was in Nigeria. All right? Yes? So this view that it is real, you start to believe it if you see it over and over that it is real. A link was found between the type and explicitness of sexual media the teens saw and their tendency to view women as sexual playthings. And let me tell you flat, 21st century teenage girl believes she is a plaything. And I'm just talking stereotype, not your child. All right? Believe she is a plaything. I talked to one young man, 16 years old. He had to, his mom had to relocate based on her job, so he had to be in a different school. So he moved from the private school setting, which was his favorite little space, to a public school setting, to one of our schools, right? And one day he ran home from school. Who tell you two girls and jack him up? Because they find he looking virgin-like and trying to take off the boy pants. They were infuriated at the fact that he would not engage with them the way that they wanted. All right? To view women as sexual playthings, and when our young girls view themselves as sexual playthings, know that there is sexual abuse somewhere in their history. And sexual abuse in our history is very high for young girls. So if it's not a communal bathroom and several people in the home using it, and who pulling the shower curtain to watch them, or have a whole by the bathroom peeping. You know, you're not unlike to do with the eye in that hole. You know, and different things like that, right? Yes? So it is real. So this thing about viewing women as sexual playthings, and then our girls are also viewing themselves the same way, we're in trouble. The more explicit the material viewed, the more likely young people will to see women in these ways. Okay? Coming down to the end timekeeper. Next slide. Okay. Of course, you have the problems then. If sex is just recreational, about teenage pregnancy, all right? Also, if you're seeing the porn, you want to experiment further, all right? For some of us here, you have to throw your mind way back to when you were a teenager, some shorter than others. I was just the other day. As a teenager, do you remember those raging hormones? Some of all telling me all they didn't have raging hormones and not looking in this direction. You can't remember when even sweaty boys smell good? They used to smell good. Yes, I remember, you know, I remember all girls school, Port of Spain, standing up outside because certain boys' schools passing. They just looked absolutely delicious. Didn't they? Yes, and you go on a little hike with a boy and all of a sudden you can't walk, you need help. So you have to hold your hand. Yes, to drag you up that hill, which you could go up for yourself, but you get weak. Yes, and then the rest of the day you dream about your hand being held. You know? But the thing is that early sexual activity, especially pornography, and these unwanted pregnancies, because you want to experiment. You're young, right? You have energy. According to a friend of mine, your work's nowhere and your draws no pay. So you have time to do all kind of things that your parents don't have time to do. All right? Next slide. Pornography encourages sexual expression without responsibility. Consequently, children engage in early sex encounters. Leaves you open for STIs. We call it now sexually transmitted infections, such as HIV, AIDS, and many other sexually transmitted diseases. Right? Yes? Okay. So what can couples and parents do? Now we're supposed to talk tomorrow. So this is my last slide right here. So I don't know if I'm supposed to go into this. No, I'm not supposed to go into this. Tune in next time. Tomorrow. God bless you.